There are two important things to know when it comes to induction cookers. One, they are fast, really fast. I recently did a video I compared gas versus induction when boiling about 500 ml of water. The induction cooker was about twice as fast as gas. Two, they are much more efficient than other cooking methods, meaning you're likely to use the least amount of money cooking with induction compared to other methods like gas or a jiko. Almost every other cooking method relies on the transfer of heat to the cooking material. With gas you have the flames, with the jiko you have the coals, with electric cooktops like hot plates you have heating elements that generate heat and then transfer it to the sufuria. An induction cooker works very differently, and that's why it is fast and efficient. The main difference with an induction cooker is that it does not generate heat. There's no heat generated here at all. Instead, heat is generated directly in the cooking material. Here's how it works. Now, underneath the glass, there is a copper coil. When you plug in the induction cooker, the copper coil creates a magnetic field. This magnetic field then interacts with the cooking material to create what are called eddy electrical currents. It is these currents that create heat directly in the pan. And that's why induction cookers are very, very fast. When you turn it on, the pan heats up almost immediately. This method of induction heating is also what makes induction cookers very efficient. Because there's no heat transfer from the cooker to the pan, most of the heat generated here goes to cooking your food. Induction cookers lose only about 16% of their energy. In comparison, a gas cooker loses most of the heat it creates, about 60% of it. Hot plate is also not very efficient. Another advantage of an induction cooker is safety. Because there are no open flames like gas, it is safer to use at home, especially where there are young kids around. The surface of the cooker also doesn't get hot, even when you're cooking something. You can safely touch it. That said, the main cooking area will get hot because of the hot pan. So whenever you take a pot or pan off the induction cooker, be careful not to touch this area. It is very hot. I've had this Ramtons induction cooker for about 2 years now. It's worked really well, it's reliable, and I still love it. Let's take a quick look at all the features and settings. Using the Ramtons induction cooker is really easy. So you simply turn it on, and then select the setting you want. There's hot pot, there's stir fry, there's milk, there's water. Now hot pot is what you're going to use most of the time. It sets the heat levels based on the wattage. So you can decrease by 200 watts, which lets you set a precise heat setting. So it goes from 2000 all the way to 200 watts. So the other setting, you can also set a stir fry setting. This one sets the heat levels based on the temperature and on the degrees Celsius. This is great when you're cooking things like meats and you need to cook them at a specific temperature. So again, you have these small increments. So you can set a very precise temperature from 240 all the way to 60 degrees. So the milk setting sets the heat at 60 degrees. The water program heats the water at the highest temperature setting. Another feature I love is the timer setting. You can leave something cooking and the induction cooker will turn off after the set amount of time. This is useful if you're cooking something like broth or maybe legumes that take a long time to cook. You can set the timer to between 1 and 3 hours. You can also set the timer for just a few minutes, which is handy when you're timing something like fish fillet or chicken breast. There's also a child lock button that keeps anyone from tampering with the settings when something is cooking. Now, let's talk about some of the downsides of induction cookers. The main one is that you need special cookware. Not any pan or pot will work on an induction cooker. It has to be magnetic. So when you go to shop for induction cookware, it's a good idea to carry a magnet with you, any sort of magnet. And then just a quick test will tell you whether it's induction compatible or not. So a magnet should stick to the underside. Now, always check the underside. Some pans or pots will have an induction material only at the bottom. So they can be aluminum on the sides. Then at the bottom, they'll have an induction compatible material like steel or iron. So always check the bottom. So you can get a full set of induction cookware. I think Ramtons sell it, but it's a bit pricey. A cheap alternative is to get individual pieces as you afford them. The Ramtons induction cooker comes with a free pan, although mine has seen better days. So this is what I was saying. For example, you can see this. It is magnetic at the bottom, but when you try on the sides, it's not magnetic at all. So remember to always check the bottom. Now, something else to keep in mind when you go shopping for induction cookware is the size. The maximum cooking area size of the Ramtons induction cooker is 24 centimeters. Don't get anything larger than that. Anything that goes beyond this cooking surface, it will not be efficient. So whatever you get, make sure it's 24 centimeters. It should either be smaller than the cooking area or fit exactly in the cooking area. Also, make sure it is as flat as possible. The closer the contact between the cooking surface, the cooking material, and the cooking surface, the more efficient it will be. The other issue with the Ramtons induction cooker is that the cooking surface is glass. It's tough glass and it doesn't crack easily, but it can still crack. And that's exactly what happened to mine. It's very important that you don't use the induction cooker if it's cracked, as it can be an electrical hazard and you can cause further damage to the internal components. I suspect mine got cracked when I was moving houses. But I'm kinda glad it happened, because now I can tell you that if the glass cracks, it's not the end of your induction cooker. You can take it to Ramtons Repair Center along Mombasa Road and they'll install a new glass top for just 1500 shillings. But as I said, it's really hard for the glass to crack. There's also the obvious downside. This induction cooker uses electricity, so if power goes out, you have nothing to cook with, unlike gas that you can use anytime. So if you're depending on this induction cooker for all your cooking, it can let you down. We also need to talk about the price of this induction cooker, cause it ain't cheap. When I bought it a few years ago, it cost about 5,000 shillings. Right now, most places are selling it for almost 10,000 shillings. For that amount, you could probably get a 2-burner tabletop cooker plus a meko. And you've not even factored in the cost of new cookware. And keep in mind, this is a single hob cooker, meaning you can only cook one thing at a time. Induction cookers are generally expensive. If you want one with 2 hobs, you have to spend over 20 or 30,000 shillings. And one with 4 hobs can easily cost 100,000 shillings or more. Now that we've looked at several downsides of the Ramtons induction cooker, what is it like to cook with it? In my experience, I've had some really good results and some not so good ones. I have used the Ramtons induction cooker to make everything from boiled rice to chapati and even ugali. It does a good job with most foods. But there are 2 issues that make me hesitate to recommend it to everyone. One, it gets hot really fast and it takes some time to get used to this. So in the beginning, before you learn how to control the temperature, you can easily burn food. 2, heat control is not very precise at lower settings. Starting at 2000 watts, the maximum settings, to 800 watts, the induction cooker produces a consistent amount of heat. Below 800 watts, the cooker works by switching between low and high power to maintain roughly the same level of heat. You can see this in this power monitor. I researched this and found it's how cheaper induction cookers work. You don't get consistently low heat. This is fine if you're simmering some beans or maybe cooking some bone broth, but it doesn't work well for things that require a consistent amount of low or medium heat, like ugali, caramelizing onions, chapati, pancakes, and so on. It's why the induction cooker doesn't work very well for certain foods. The other thing I want to talk about is how much electricity the Ramtons induction cooker uses. I tested this with legumes because they use the most power to boil. While the induction cooker is efficient, it's important to use the power settings properly to use as little electricity as possible. If you're boiling beans with the power set at the max throughout, it's going to use a lot of power. The trick is to set the max power and bring whatever you're cooking to a boil. Then once it's boiling, lower the power setting. To give you an idea of how much power settings make a difference, when I lower the power to 800 watts, the induction cooker uses about 2.5 kilowatt hours or tokens to boil beans. When I lower the power to 400 watts, the usage drops by more than 1 unit. Now I use between 1.3 and 1.5 tokens to boil legumes. You'll use even less power if you soak your beans or njahe overnight before boiling. I have not found a reliable way to measure how much it costs to boil legumes with gas, but I suspect the induction cooker is cheaper to use. But it's not the cheapest way to boil legumes, or anything that needs to be cooked for long. An electric pressure cooker uses a lot less power. Hopefully, I'll be able to measure one soon and compare it with the induction cooker. I have been using the Ramtons Induction cooker for over 2 years now. Here's what I love most about it. It's fast. Water boils in no time, you don't have to wait for long for the pan to heat up, and it generally cooks food faster. It's also great for stir frying. The pan heats up quickly and you can easily adjust how hot it is. The timer setting is super helpful for time sensitive foods like chicken breast or fish fillet. It's safer than a gas cooker since there are no flames and the cooker surface doesn't get hot. It's also easy to keep clean. Once the cooking area cools down, just give it a quick wipe. As for the downsides, I've already mentioned the temperature control thing. Below 800 watts, it doesn't maintain consistent power level. I've not been able to make good chapatis, pancakes or ugali on the induction cooker. They are either undercooked or they burn. Secondly, it's expensive. And remember you need special cookware too, which means spending more money on new pans and pots. Then there's the obvious one, you can't use it during a blackout. On the other hand though, it's been a handy backup when my gas is run out unexpectedly. And lastly, it's noisy. The noise mostly comes from the cooling fan. If you live alone or with just one other person, you can totally use the Ramtons induction cooker as your main cooking implement. But I still recommend having a gas cooker, even if it's just a meko, for certain foods and in case of a blackout. For families, you can get the Ramtons induction cooker to complement your gas cooker or as a backup. Let me know what you think in the comments if you've used this induction cooker before.